This account is frozen. There's nothing I can do." The words, sharp as shards of ice, sliced through the warm, stale air of the bank lobby. Alistair Finchaddy, 2 years young, his back straighter than men half his age, despite the threadbare coat and the tremor in his hands, looked at the teller. Her name tag read Karen, and her expression was a carefully constructed mask of professional indifference. "Please," he began, his voice raspy, a mere whisper against the hum of computers and the distant murmur of other transactions. "My medicine. I need it today. And my wife, Eleanor, she needs hers too. It's a matter of urgency." Karen sighed a small impatient puff of errand, tapped her perfectly manicured nails on the counter. "Sir, the system says frozen. Policy is policy." Alistair felt a cold dread begin to seep into his bones. Dread far colder than the January wind whipping outside the grand doors of Prosperity National Bank. He had faced down far worse than an uncooperative bank teller, but right now she held all the power. If you believe every soul deserves dignity, comment respect below. Alistair Finch had walked 3 miles to Prosperity National Bank. The early morning chill. He could have taken the bus, but the walk, he felt, kept his old soldier's legs from seizing up completely. His pensiona, modest sum for a lifetime of service, both in uniform and out, was direct deposited into this account. An account he'd held for over 40 years. He was a man of routine, of quiet habits, and even quieter dignity. His clothes, though worn, were impeccably clean. His shoes, though scuffed, were polished to a dull sheen. A small, almost invisible lapel, pin a detail missed by most, hinted at a past steeped in duty and sacrifice. He didn't ask for much from the world, only what was rightfully his, what he had earned. The grand marble facade of Prosperity National Bank, a name that now felt like a cruel irony, loomed before him. He just needed enough to cover the pharmacy bill, a little extra for groceries. He hadn't anticipated a battle inside. The queue was already long. Alistair waited patiently, his gaze sweeping over the polished floors, the oak-paneled walls, the subtle displays of wealth and security. When his turn finally came, he approached Karen's window with a polite nod. "Good morning, ma'am." Like to withdraw $300, he slid his debit card and a withdrawal slip under the thick glass. Karen took them. Her movements brisk, almost aggressive. She swiped the card, typed, frowned. "There seems to be a problem, Mr. Finch." She peered at the slip, then at her screen. "Your account is frozen. There's a flag on it." Alistair felt a knot tighten in his chest. "Frozen? But why? All my deposits are regular. I haven't done anything unusual." Karen shrugged, her eyes flicking to the growing line behind him. "The system. Flag? Could be anything. Anti-fraud measure? Maybe. You'll have to speak to the manager to get it sorted, and that can take days. Sometimes weeks. Days, weeks." He didn't have days. Eleanor's specific heart medication wasn't cheap, and his own prescription for his persistent cough, a souvenir from a forgotten war fought in a damp, cold jungle, was waiting. "Ma'am, I understand there are procedures, but this is an emergency. My wife and I, we need our medications. Is there truly nothing you can do to release a small amount? Just for today?" His voice was calm, but threaded with an undeniable urgency. Karen's expression hardened. "Sir, I've told you. It's frozen. That means no transactions. Zero. Do you understand?" Her tone was patronizing, as if speaking to a child or someone mentally deficient. The people behind him were starting to grumble, their impatience a palpable wave pressing against Alistair's back. He felt his cheeks flush, a rare occurrence for a man who had faced enemy fire without flinching. This felt different. A slow, bureaucratic strangulation. "Perhaps if I could just speak to the manager, as you suggested," Alistair asked, keeping his voice, even though his heart hammered against his ribs. Karen let out an exaggerated sigh. "He's very busy, but fine." She pressed a button under her counter and spoke into an intercom, her voice dripping with disdain. "Mr. Davies, customer at window 3, query on a frozen account. Insistent." A few minutes later, a portly man in a slightly too tight suit, Mr. Davies, the branch manager, merged from a back office, an air of harried importance preceding him. He didn't make eye contact with Alistair initially, instead addressing Karen. "What's the issue here, Karen?" "I'm in the middle of a regional call." Karen recapped quickly. emphasizing Alistair's insistence and the system flag. Davies finally turned to Alistair, his gaze sweeping over the old man's worn coat and slightly stooped shoulders, with a flicker of something Alistair recognized all too well: dismissal. "Mr. Finch, is it?" Davies said, not unkindly, but with a firmness that brooked no argument. "I'm afraid Karen is correct. If the system has flagged your account, my hands are tied. These are automated security protocols designed to protect our customers and, of course, the bank." Alistair leaned slightly on the counter. His legs felt a little weak. "Mr. Davies, I appreciate the need for security. I truly do, but I am not a fraudster. I am an 82-year-old man who needs to buy medicine for himself and his wife. This isn't a large sum. Can you not, as the manager, make an exception? A temporary override given the circumstances?" Davies steepled his fingers. "While I sympathize with your predicament, Mr. Finch, exceptions are how security breaches happen. Rules are rules for a reason. We can initiate an investigation into why the account was frozen. You'll need to fill out some forms. We'll submit them. It could take up to 10 business days to get a response. 10 business days." The words echoed. In Alistair's mind, 10 days without Eleanor's pills could land her in the hospital. 10 days of his own racking cough worsening. He felt a rising tide of desperation, feeling he hadn't experienced so acutely since he was a young man in a muddy foxhole, outnumbered and outgunned. 10 days, he repeated, his voice barely audible. "Sir, with all due respect, my wife might not have 10 days without her medication. Surely there must be a humanitarian consideration." Davies's expression became a little sterner. "Sir, I cannot simply hand out the bank's money based on anecdotal claims, no matter how sympathetic they may sound. Do you have any other means? Other accounts? Credit cards?" Alistair shook his head slowly. "This is my primary account. My pension goes in here. Everything I have." He fumbled in his pocket, his hand trembling more noticeably now. This Lizette, his last desperate card to play. Hand emerged from his pocket, clutching a small, worn leather card holder. From it, he carefully extracted an old, slightly yellowed business card laminated decades ago. The printing was faded, but still legible. "There was a man," Alistair began, his voice low and raspy, his gaze fixed on the card as if drawing strength from it. "A very good man, General Sterling. He gave me this card a long time ago. Said if I ever found myself in a true binda, real fix-I should call this number. He said the Sterling family would always remember." He held out the card. Mr. Davies glanced at it, a brief, dismissive look. "General Sterling, sir. That sounds like a very old connection. People move on. Numbers change." "He was a man of his word," Alistair interrupted, a faint spark in his eyes, "and he said his son would honor it too. Jonathan Sterling. I believe he's important now." Davies almost scoffed. "Jonathan Sterling, the regional vice president of Prosperity National Bank." "Sir, Mr. Sterling is an extremely busy man. He doesn't take unsolicited calls from the general public based on decades-old acquaintances of his father." The implication hung heavy in the air. From someone like you. Alistair's shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly. He had hoped foolishly, perhaps, that the name, the card, would mean something. Nearby, a younger teller, Sarah, who had been quietly processing transactions at the next window, had overheard snippets of the exchange. She'd seen the quiet desperation in Alistair's eyes, the subtle tremor in his hands that spoke not of weakness but of age and perhaps unseen burdens. She felt a pang of sympathy, sharp contrast to Karen's cold indifference and Davies's bureaucratic stonewalling. This old man wasn't a threat. He was clearly in distress. "Mr. Davies," Sarah ventured timidly, her voice barely above a whisper, Perhaps I could try the number for him, just to show we've explored all options." Davies shot her an irritated glance. "Sarah, don't be ridiculous. We have procedures. Wasting time calling a disconnected number or bothering Mr. Sterling's office with this is not procedure." But then perhaps, seeing a way to definitively end the matter and placate what he perceived as a stubborn old man's delusion, he waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, very well. Go ahead, Sarah. Prove the number. Prove to Mr. Finch that it's a dead end. Then perhaps he'll fill out the forms and let us get back to our actual work." He turned back to Alistair. But this is the last attempt, Mr. Finch. After this, it's the forms or nothing." Sarah took the faded card from Alistair's trembling hand, her own fingers surprisingly steady. She offered him a small, encouraging smile, a tiny beacon of warmth in the otherwise frigid atmosphere of the bank. "I'll just try this number, sir," she said softly, before turning to her terminal's phone. Davies watched with a smug, impatient expression, arms crossed, tapping his foot. Karen smirked, already anticipating the anticlimactic failure. Alistair stowed silently, his hope dwindling but not entirely extinguished. He focused on Sarah's gentle demeanor, stark contrast to the others. Sarah carefully dialed the number, printed on the card. It rang once, twice on the third ring. A crisp, professional voice answered, not a generic receptionist, but someone who sounded important. "Sterling, private line." "How may I direct your call, Sarah's?" "Yes, good morning," she stammered, suddenly nervous. "My name is Sarah. I'm a teller at the Prosperity National Bank downtown branch. I have a customer, Mr. Alistair Finch. He has this card," and he said, she faltered, unsure how to phrase the unusual request. The voice on the other end became sharper. "Alistair Finch. Did you say Alistair Finch?" "Yes, sir. That's his name," Sarah confirmed, glancing at Alistair, who stood ramrod straight. His eyes fixed on her. There was a pause. Then the voice, now imbued with an undeniable urgency, said, "Keep him there. Do not let him leave. I am Jonathan Sterling. I am on my way. Tell me your exact branch address." Now, her face pale, Davies, noticing her expression, scoffed. "Well, disconnected." Voicemail for some long-retired secretary. Sarah looked from Davies to Alistair, then back to Davies. That was Mr. Jonathan Sterling, the regional VP, he said. "He said he's coming right now. He said not to let Mr. Finch leave." Karen's smirk vanished. Davies's jaw dropped. "What? You're joking, Sterling. Coming here for 4. For him, he gestured vaguely at Alistair, his tone a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. The smug certainty drained from his face, replaced by a pasty confusion. The quiet hum of the bank seemed to amplify, his expression unreadable. Waiting, he had played his card. Now, it was time to see the hand. Less than 5 minutes later, time frame that felt like an eternity to the suddenly anxious bank staff, the main doors of Prosperity National Bank burst open with such force they slammed against the marble walls, the sound echoing like a cannon shot through the suddenly silent lobby. Heads turned, customers in line froze mid-dash transaction. In strode a man radiating an aura of absolute commental, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that whispered quiet expense. Jonathan Sterling, Regional Vice President of Prosperity National Bank, scanned the room, his eyes like lasers. He was younger than Alistair remembered his father, but the set of his jaw, the intensity in his gaze, that was pure General Sterling. "Where is he?" Sterling's voice, though not loud, cut through the silence, sharp and authoritative. "Where is Alistair Finch?" Karen, who had been attempting to look busy, pointed a trembling finger towards Alistair. Mr. Davies, his face now a sickly shade of gray, took a hesitant step forward, attempting a fawning smile that didn't quite reach. His eyes. "Mr. Sterling, what an unexpected honor. We were just assisting Mr. Finch with a minor account irregularity." Sterling ignored Davies completely, his eyes fanned. Alistair, and the hard, almost severe expression on his face instantly melted away, replaced by one of profound, almost reverent respect. But directly to where Alistair Finch stood, small and unassuming in his worn coat. "Mr. Finch, sir," Jonathan Sterling exclaimed, his voice now filled with a warmth that astounded everyone present. He reached Alistair, and to the utter shock of every employee and customer in Prosperity National Bank, he extended his hand. Not for a handshake, but in a gesture of assistance, as if to a revered elder. "I came as soon as I heard your name. Has anyone given you any trouble?" He cast a brief, ice-cold glare towards Davies and Karen, a glare that promised repercussions. Alistair, for the first time that morning, allowed a small, weary smile to touch his lips. "Jonathan, young Jonathan. You've grown. You look like your father." Sterling's expression softened further. "It's an honor to hear you say that, sir. He spoke of you often, with the deepest admiration." He then turned, his posture becoming rigid, his voice regaining its steel as he faced the stunned bank manager. "Mr. Davies, perhaps you can explain to me why a man to whom this bank and my family owes an immeasurable debt was being treated like a nuisance?" Mr. Davies stammered, his earlier pomposity utterly deflated. "Mr. Davies, Sterling, sigh. There was a system flag, standard procedure." "I had no idea," Jonathan Sterling cut him off with a sharp wave of his hand. "No idea, Mr. Davies? Do you have any idea who this man is?" His voice resonated through the bank, silencing every rustle, every cough. All eyes were fixed on Alistair Finch, who stood with quiet dignity beside the powerful executive. "This is Alistair Finch, Sterling," declared, his voice ringing with pride and a fierce protective anger. "A young Captain Sterling, my father found himself and his company cut off, surrounded, outnumbered 10 to 1. In sub-zero temperatures, ammunition was low, food was gone, morale was shattered. They were facing annihilation." Davies was visibly sweating. "It was Sergeant Alistair Finch," Sterling continued, his gaze returning to Alistair with profound respect, "who, under a hail of enemy fire, crawled across frozen ground, exposed and alone, to retrieve a working radio from a destroyed command post. It was Sergeant Finch who rallied the remaining men, leading a desperate breakout through enemy lines, carrying wounded men on his back while returning fire. He saved my father's life that day. He saved more than 30 men who went on to have families, children, grandchildren. There would be no Sterling family today and certainly no Prosperity Bank, as its foundations were built with the life he saved." Into his breast pocket and pulled out a small framed photograph. It was old, black and white, showing two young soldiers in worn combat gear, arms around each other, exhaustion and grim determination etched on their faces. One was clearly a younger Alistair Finch, the other, unmistakably, a young General Sterling. To Jonathan Sterling was striking. "My father carried this photo until the day he died," Sterling said, his voice thick with emotion. "He told me, 'Jonathan, if Alistair Finch ever comes to you, if he ever needs anything you drop, everything. You move heaven and earth. There is no debt too great, no request too small, for that man.'" The silence in the bank was absolute, heavy with unspoken awe and dawning shame. "Jonathan," Sterling turned his steely gaze back to Mr. Davies and Karen. "A system flag?" he asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Standard procedure. You had a hero standing before you, a man whose courage and sacrifice are the very bedrock of what true prosperity is built upon. And you treated him with dismissal and bureaucratic indifference over a paltry sum for medicine." Davies swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Sir, I am so profoundly sorry. If I had known that is precisely the point." "Mr. Davies," Sterling thundered, his voice echoing in the vast space. "You shouldn't need to know someone's entire life story to treat them with basic human dignity and respect, especially an elderly man clearly in distress. This bank is supposed to serve the community, not act as an unfeeling gatekeeper." He took a deep breath, visibly composing himself, then turned to Alistair with a softer expression. "Mr. Finch, your account is, of course, immediately unfrozen." Furthermore, he signaled to an assistant who had discreetly entered behind him. Carrying a heavy-looking briefcase, the assistant stepped forward and opened the briefcase on a nearby counter. It was filled with neat stacks of currency. "Mr. Finch, on behalf of Prosperity National Bank and as a personal token of gratitude from the Sterling family, I want to present you with this." He gestured to the briefcase. $100,000. Consider it an advance on the interest. This bank owes you for your immeasurable service, a correction for the distress caused today, and a small measure of the respect you are due." Alistair looked at the money, then at Jonathan Sterling, his eyes glistening. "Jonathan, this is too much." Only needed a few hundred for Sterling. Gently placed a hand on Alistair's shoulder. "Sir, it's the least we can do, please, for my father. For everything you did." "Young lady, what is your name?" "Sarah, sir," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "Sarah," Sterling said with a warm smile, "you showed initiative, compassion, and common sense qualities that seem to be in short supply around here. There's a promotion and a significant raise in your immediate future. We need more people like you at Prosperity Bank." Karen looked down at her shoes, her face burning. Davies looked as if he wished the marble floor would swallow him whole. Mr. Davies and Karen, under the unwavering, disappointed gaze of Jonathan Sterling, stammered out their apologies to Alistair Finch. They were clumsy, inadequate words. Alistair, ever the gentleman, accepted them with a quiet nod. He bore no malice, only a lingering sadness that it had come to this. The other customers in the bank, who had witnessed the entire drama unfold, were visibly moved. Some had tears in their eyes. An elderly woman whispered, "God bless him," and a younger man in a business suit spontaneously started clapping, a sound that quickly spread through the lobby, transforming into a heartfelt ovation for the unassuming hero in their midst. Jonathan Sterling personally escorted Alistair to a comfortable chair in his own temporary office, ensuring his account was not only restored but credited with a substantial additional sum for the grievous error and emotional distress caused. He ordered coffee and pastries and sat with Alistair not as a bank VP to a customer, but as one man to another, listening intently, as Alistair, finally feeling seen and respected, spoke a little about Eleanor, about his life, about the old days. "My father never forgot you, Mr. Finch," Sterling said softly. "He always said you were the quietest, bravest man he ever knew." Alistair smiled faintly. "Your father was a good man, Jonathan, a fine officer. He always looked out for his men." Before, Alistair left with a dedicated bank car arranged by Sterling to take him to the pharmacy, and then home. Sterling announced to his staff, his voice firm, effective immediately, this branch and, indeed, all branches of Prosperity National will be implementing a new Veterans Priority Initiative, special training on sensitivity, expedited services, and a dedicated helpline. "We will not allow a hero like Mr. Finch or any veteran to be treated with anything less than the utmost respect and care this institution can offer. This incident today has been a harsh lesson, but one we will learn from." Alistair, clutching a small, manageable envelope with enough cash for his immediate needs, turned at the door. "Thank you, Jonathan," he said, his voice stronger now, just for the money, but for remembering. For honor, Sterling simply nodded, his eyes conveying a depth of gratitude that needed no further words. The events at Prosperity National Bank sent ripples throughout the institution. Mr. Davies found himself reassigned to a back-office role, with significantly fewer responsibilities and mandated intensive customer sensitivity training. Karen received a formal warning and similar retraining. Her future at the bank precarious. Saratru, to Sterling's word, was promoted to head teller, her compassionate approach lauded as the new standard. But more importantly, Alistair Finch got his medicine, and Eleanor got hers. The $100,000 sum that initially overwhelmed him was carefully managed, ensuring their comfort and security for their remaining years. It eased the worry lines from Eleanor's face and allowed Alistair to breathe a little easier, knowing she was taken care of. He didn't change much. He still took his walks, still maintained his quiet dignity. But there was a new lightness in his step, the story as such stories do got out. People in his neighborhood looked at him with a new awareness, a deeper respect. The tired, threadbare coat seemed to matter less than the invisible medals he truly wore. The core lesson of that day resonated far beyond the marble walls of the bank. That true worth is not always visible on the surface. It lies in character, in service, in the quiet sacrifices made, often unseen, and UNACKNOWLEDGED. It taught that a moment of disrespect can be rectified by a profound act of recognition, that sometimes the past reaches forward to remind us of debts that can never truly be repaid, only honored. A few weeks later, a small, polished brass plaque appeared beside the entrance of the Prosperity National Bank downtown branch. It read, "This branch proudly supports and honors our nation's veterans. Your service will be remembered." Alistair saw it on one of his walks. He paused, read it, and a slow smile spread across his face. It wasn't about the money, or the apology, or even the plaque. It was about the simple, profound act of being seen, of being valued, of respect finally, undeniably rendered. If you believe in honoring those who've served and that true character always shines through, subscribe to Hidden Sparks for more stories that uplift. And inspire. Type honor in the comments if you stand for respecting our elders and heroes. Like and share this story to spread the message of dignity and gratitude. Subscribe to Hidden Sparks because every hero deserves to be remembered. Let's make sure no act of courage is ever forgotten. Share, like, and subscribe to Hidden Sparks today.